how do sugar substitutes perform in cooking and baking keto? So these are some keto baking tips around sugar substitutes, and we are going to talk a little bit about the good and the bad sugar substitutes as well. So first of all, we're not going to go super deep into the science, although I am going to provide you with some links in the description so you can go back and read some studies if you're interested in that. But we get a lot of questions about how do I tell if a sugar substitute is impacting my blood sugars? And the number one way to tell is to test your blood sugar. So get a hold of a glucometer if you're diabetic, or you probably already have one if you're not. They're inexpensive. They're often covered by flexible spending accounts. So get one and start doing some tests, like understand where your blood sugar is and test around different foods. And that's going to give you the most accurate information about what's going on in your body, at least the most accurate that you can do at home without something like a continuous blood glucose monitor or insulin testing. So these, I'm going to share just years of experience, and Jeremy, sorry, I'm going to do a lot of the talking here because I've been baking really since just a few months after I started keto when you hopped on board. So I'm going to kind of share my lessons learned, which sugar substitutes are my go-to sugar substitutes, and when to avoid different ones. So we're going to start with the most popular one.
And I'll give you my opinion on these as the beneficiary of a lot of taste testing sessions of these sugars.
So erythritol. So comment below if you've ever used erythritol in a recipe. So it's a very, very common sugar substitute. It's in a lot of blends, and it's probably most well known for the cooling effect.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that is either very off-putting to some people when they use erythritol, or they just don't mind it. But it's definitely something to take into account when you're baking something. So
the thing to know with erythritol is that it likes to crystallize. So it likes to crystallize in a couple different ways. So in leftovers. So a lot of time I will make maybe my homemade keto maple syrup and I'll use erythritol or a blend with erythritol in it. Or we'll make frosting. Well, what will happen to the leftovers over time is it crystallizes. Now sometimes you can simply reheat it and get rid of the crystallization, and sometimes it sticks. It also likes to crystallize when you're making syrup sometimes. So if you're like cooking us down to syrup or trying to make something like that and you're like, why is this just like crystallizing like in the bottom of the pan? It's almost like it's making, have you ever seen rock candy?
Right, yeah.
It like very small versions of rock candy. That's what I mean by crystallizing. So erythritol does powder really well in a home blender. So a lot of times we like to use it for like keto frostings. A lot of our recipes that are in the Keto Cupcake Cookbook that's behind us. But again, over time, it's going to kind of crystallize and become kind of crunchy.
But there are times when you want it to do that, right? Like for certain effects in certain desserts.
Exactly. So for example, keto coffee cake. To get that nice crunchy topping, making that streusel using erythritol is how you can get a nice crunch.
Yeah, and that's one of my favorite things, and that's the reason I brought that up, because I really like the coffee cake. I really like that that crunch, it's
so
nice.
Our coffee cake recipe, if you go to wholebodyliving.com and you look up keto coffee cake muffins, I actually need to push that into a actual coffee cake, but that's the same, that's the one we usually use, the recipe. So one other thing, and I'm going to post a link to this study, is larger quantities of erythritol can cause laxative effects or maybe some gas, flatulence, or diarrhea in some people, especially if you've got SIBO, you've got some more active fermentation going on in your gut. So just be aware of that. So if you have very loose stools, if you're having just some discomfort after eating anything with erythritol in it, you may just need to kind of chill out on that for a while and try something different before going back to it later. So if you can kind of take care of that gut health, sometimes it'll go away, but also sometimes it's just a problem for some people. So I tend to be more sensitive to that than Jeremy does.
Yeah.
So if you use erythritol and you like the taste, let us know in the comments. And if you don't really prefer it, if you don't like that cooling effect, let us know that in the comments as well. So the next one is a newer one, Now it's allulose, and it's been around a while, but it's not really been available to a home cook. It's been more used in product formulations. So allulose is actually a rare sugar. Can you pronounce that?
I think it's D-psychose. Piscose. Sorry, D-piscose.
So allulose tastes about 70 to 80% as sweet as sugar. So a lot of people, me included, like to add either the liquid stevia drops, which we'll talk about shortly, or the liquid monk fruit drops, or a blend of the two, just into the allulose to kind of boost that sweetness. And we'll talk more about that later. So a few things to know with allulose. Now it is a rare sugar, so it really acts more like sugar when you cook and bake with it. However, it browns faster than sugar. So a lot of times you've got to bring your oven temperature down, or you might just, so for example, when you make the cupcakes out of the Keto Cupcake Cookbook, you'll just end up with a browned top and outsides for the cupcake. The texture is fine, and it tastes a little bit more brown sugary because it has just browned while baking. But you can just drop your oven temperature 25 degrees, increase your baking time, and that can even out things a little bit. So just be aware that it browns faster, but it's great for making things like caramel. So we love allulose for making caramel, and we're going to have a recipe coming out next week with a caramel recipe with allulose, so look for that. But one thing to know is you've really got to watch, and you've actually got to smell as you're cooking it, because you'll smell that it's browning just before you see it with your eyeballs, and as soon as you see it browning in a syrup or a caramel, you've got to pull it off the heat. Otherwise, it can very rapidly burn. And nobody likes to throw away expensive sugar substitutes, because all of these sugar substitutes are more expensive than table sugar.
And one of the things that I really like about allulose is, as we've been on the keto diet for a longer period, my sensitivity to sweetness has increased, right? So we taste sugar much more easily than we have in the past. And so I like having the option of something that is less sweet than sugar, because it's not so overpowering. And that's what I find with some of the other sweeteners that are, like
less
2 times or 3 times more sweet, is it's just too much, right? So allulose is a nice break from some of that, because it's less sweet than table sugar.
So another thing that allulose really shines at is that it's great in ice cream and anything you're going to freeze as leftovers. So the ice cream texture compared to any other sugar substitute is just amazing. And you'll see that if you've ever had the Real Good Foods ice cream. You can go to our coupons and discounts page on our website and find a coupon if you want to try the Real Good Foods ice cream. But it is by far the creamiest, most like ice cream keto product that we have tried, and we have tried all of them that we can get our hands on.
Yeah, we've tried a lot. Yeah, and this is by far it. In fact, I would stack it up against somebody like Blue Bunny. Like, their best vanilla ice cream is really given a challenge by a product like Real Good Foods vanilla ice cream.
So we do have a review of that. If you're interested in looking at that, you can just type in Real Good Foods ice cream review, and it'll come up on YouTube. You'll see our faces there. But so again, it works beautifully in ice cream. If you're making homemade ice cream, anything you're going to freeze works great. Frosting, something like that. It powders really easily in a home blender. So if you're going to make frosting, I always recommend you powder your sugar substitute first. It's generally well tolerated. People don't really report GI distress, and it's actually in studies shown to help regulate blood sugar. So I'm going to post 2 different studies in the description below this video so that you can go back and kind of look at those studies and read about them. But there's actually some potential health benefits to allulose that are being studied.
Yeah, so one of the first things that they were studying allulose in is a way to control the blood sugar of diabetics. And it's extremely effective. And we've actually done some blood sugar testing on ourselves, and I've actually seen my blood sugar go down after consuming allulose, within 20 minutes of doing the test, after eating, right? So I think it's actually very effective at helping to control blood sugar.
All right, so next up we have BochaSweet. Now, BochaSweet is a brand name for a specific type of pentose that's extracted from the kabocha pumpkin. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Kabocha pumpkin. So things to know about it when cooking and baking. It doesn't brown and it doesn't burn. So you can put I experimented. I put BochaSweet, water, boiled. You can just boil it and it doesn't turn into a syrup. It doesn't burn or scorch or anything like that. So there's no browning effect. It yields the very softest cakes and baked goods. So if you're looking for soft in your recipe, BochaSweet really delivers there. So we love to use BochaSweet in our cake products. Other sugar substitutes work really well too, but BochaSweet is just very soft. You know, it yields the crumbly texture that we all know and love with a cake. So it doesn't crystallize when cooking with it. So if you want to avoid the crystallization, like with leftovers in your fridge, it doesn't do that. But it doesn't mix well in cold ingredients. So if you are making a frosting and you're using just room temperature ingredients, it doesn't want to mix well. So I highly recommend you powder it. Now, BochaSweet does have a powdered version. We will either even powder the powdered version, just because it'll clump a little bit. We'll powder the powdered version and then we'll make frosting with it. So just be aware that it doesn't want to dissolve. But if you're going to make like a cheesecake or something you're heating up, it's going to be fine. So it works great in ice creams. It was the original one that I used in my ice cream recipe because it doesn't recrystallize. So it's also great in ice creams and anything you're going to throw in the freezer because it's not going to crystallize on you. Now there's some studies done. They're all in Japanese. But the owner of the company actually is a type 1 diabetic and uses this pentose to kind of control his blood sugars. So there's some research around it, but nothing done in English. So I don't have anything to post there. But I do have a recipe you can try that's on our website. It's our glazed keto pound cake, and he's about to get really excited.
Yes, I really like the glazed keto pound cake. I love pound cakes. You know, like as a military guy, like the pound cake is the thing that you're looking for in your MRE when you're out in the field. So it's nice to get a healthy pound cake at home. I really like it.
So you'll notice in that recipe, we've used BochaSweet in the cake, right? We talked about that. You can use any sugar substitute, but our preference is BochaSweet in the cake. And then I actually used Lakanto's monk fruit blend when I made the frosting because I did want a little bit of crystallization to happen because for a glaze on a pound cake, I wanted kind of a crispy, right? It glazes on, it drips over beautifully, but then I wanted it to harden.
Right.
And I wanted it to have just a little bit of a crunch in the end. So I used that feature of erythritol to kind of create that texture. So you can check that recipe out and try it out. That keto pound cake is a great one as the holidays come up. We've got Halloween coming up. You know, you could dye it green or orange or something fun. You know, maybe mix your batters together, kind of create something different for your family that's not so high in sugar. So it's great to share. And then it's a great one as we come up on Thanksgiving to take as a treat, as something to share with work or with your family. So next up we have monk fruit. So monk fruit is its actual name is Lo Han Go.
Yeah. Lo Han Go.
Right. It's native to China. It's been used in Chinese medicine for decades, and it's 150 to 250 times sweeter than sugar. So that's why a lot of times you'll see monk fruit in a blend. So our brand choice for this is Lakanto. We really like Lakanto's sweeteners. They've got all different kinds. They've got a golden version, which tastes just a little bit golden, you know, more like if you needed a brown sugar. And then they've got powdered. They've got granulated, and they've also got pure monk fruit. So they have I should have brought it in, they have a canister of pure monk fruit, and again, it's 150 to 250 times sweeter than sugar. So you use just a little bit. And then they also have drops. So again, just 1 to 2 drops, like in a cup of coffee, sweetens it right up. So these are great pure forms of monk fruit that you can try and play around with. If you do end up ordering from Lakanto, you can save 20% with the coupon Keto Kitchen. And check out their chocolates because their chocolate chips are our very favorite keto-friendly chocolate chips on the market.
Yeah, so a lot of people will start off with something like a Lily's chocolate chip or something because they're out there, but Lakanto's just, I don't know, overall just the taste is a little bit better for me.
And Lily's has inulin, and a lot of people can be very sensitive to inulin, and it may even spike blood sugar in some. So if you're struggling to get into ketosis and you have inulin in your diet, this is one of those ingredients we mentioned we were going to be talking about to look out for. So make sure that, you test inulin and make sure that you tolerate it well.
Not to be confused with insulin.
No.
Right. Inulin.
All right, so then we have stevia. So I've been using stevia for well over a decade. It was the very, I found out that I was very sensitive to Splenda, and so I moved over to stevia. So I've been using stevia for a long time and have tried dozens of brands. But it's a natural 0-calorie sweetener. It comes from the stevia plant. It's 200 to 250 times sweeter than sugar. So again, like I prefer to use a liquid form of stevia. Our brand pick is Sweet Leaf Stevia Clear Drops. Be careful because a lot of their flavored drops contain vegetable glycerin. And vegetable glycerin can spike blood sugar.
Yeah.
It's sweet in itself, so be aware of that. And remember, that's a good tip. Like, always go back and read labels. Go back and read the ingredients every time you purchase a product, because formulations do change over time.
And it might not just be the formulation. It might be that the labeling requirements have changed year over year, and the product could be exactly the same, but the labeling requirements have changed in a way that it forces them to expose or maybe even hide, get away with hiding something behind another name.
Yeah, so we like to use stevia. So the stevia drops, the monk fruit drops, we like to use those, and we like to combine them together, because one of my tricks when using a sugar substitute is to blend multiple sugar substitutes together. And that provides a fuller sugar flavor when you're baking or cooking with these different sweeteners. Just one might have, erythritol has a little bit of a cooling effect. Stevia doesn't taste just like sugar by itself. But if you blend 2, 3, 4, you'll find like that sweet spot for your taste buds. And I have very sensitive taste buds, so I'm very particular about it, as Jeremy knows. So, one place that we've used, a recipe I want to share with you where we've used the stevia drops, is in our homemade keto chocolate chips. So you can actually make chocolate chips at home. We've used cacao butter, but stevia drops or monk fruit drops would shine here, because the problem with making your own chocolate at home becomes getting the sugar substitutes in a granulated or powdered form to dissolve into the chocolate. So that's where these drops can come in and really shine in your cooking. So if you want to make your own chocolate chips, because you don't want to pay the price, that they are more expensive, absolutely. So you can save some money by making your own chocolate chips. I just make them into chunks, right? Like, I don't need the molds.
Right.
That's a lot of work. I just make them into molds. So we'll post the link to that recipe below, and also a study around stevia. So finally, I didn't want to finish before mentioning xylitol. So xylitol was one that we tried very early on, and I very quickly learned that I don't tolerate it. However, it really bakes very similarly to sugar. So for something like keto brownies, we do have a recipe we'll post here for you. Our keto brownies made with xylitol, if you know you can tolerate it, is the closest one we've ever tried to real brownies. And I'm still working on it with Allulose, trying to get it right. So look out for that. But so the other thing to know with xylitol is it's highly toxic to animals, even in small amounts. So if you have dogs, cats, or any animals in the house that might get into things, a lot of people choose just not to have xylitol at all.
Right.
In the house.
Us.
Yeah. So, well, I don't tolerate it, so we used up what we had, and then we didn't replace it. So, our very favorite sugar substitutes are the Allulose, the BochaSweet, Erythritol, monk fruit blend, stevia. So there's a lot of options to choose from. So we'll make sure as we wrap this video into the shorter segment that'll be posted next week that we post all these links in the description below, so it's easy to find for you guys.